and more importantly, of course, make as a big a positive impact as I could with all these different nonprofits.
All right. Now I gotta delve a little bit deeper because I noticed that you actually self-funded this trip, and you drove across the country except with flights to Hawaii and Alaska. So
Yeah.
So in a sense, was that like an entrepreneurial mindset? Thinking that
Yeah.
this can be done.
Yeah. So at Binghamton, right? Go Bearcats. I studied English and economics, right? So if you've read my book, or you read my blog posts, I tend to write pretty cleanly, which is nice. But from the economics perspective, Cheval, I'm not an economist, and I'm not an actuary. I'm not a banker. I don't use my economics degree mathematically every single day. But economically speaking, when you think about the value of your life, when you think about opportunity cost, which is if I don't do this today, what is the cost of not taking action? What is the cost of not starting my own business? What is the cost of not asking that girl out on a date? Or what is the cost of just sitting there doing nothing? Right. And for me, the physical cost of visiting 50 states in 100 days, and I should have double checked. It was somewhere around, I think, $12,000, which is a lot of money. But in the grand scheme of things in your life, $12,000 is not the end of the world. And certainly when you're comparing that to the cost of college, you're comparing that to the cost of a graduate degree. It's nothing. It can be a drop in the bucket, especially if you go to a beautiful SUNY institution like Binghamton University. And so I have the book right on the other side of the table here, and I don't want to reach across, but I've been reading this book by Chris Guillebeau. I don't know if you know who Chris Guillebeau is.
Yes.
He's the first person to visit all 357 countries around the world, right? Great guy. What a cool idea. He wrote this book called The Art of Nonconformity, where he talks, and if you haven't read this book, do it. It's fantastic. Where he talks about like the alternative college experience, right? And how the way that the world has changed over these last few decades, you can really gain so much valuable experience at so much less of a cost than going to obtain a traditional master's degree, just by reading certain books, connecting with certain influencers, going out and living certain experiences. Download an app that'll teach you a new language for free. That's very much what I saw in the philosophy that I took with 50 States, 100 Days, right? I believe, Cheval, that I have earned a master's degree in United States travel, and live streaming and social media, and that's very special to think about, right? I don't have a piece of paper on the wall to mark it down, but I think that conversations like this, I think that having the chance to speak at conferences around the country, being entrusted with brands like Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Salvation Army, working with Humana last year, like these are enormous opportunities that did not require me to get a master's degree, right? I went out and did all this learning on my own, and now here we are, so the money will come, man. That's the last thing I want to say. And I feel bad. I always monopolize your time when we do these live streams, but the money will come, guys. You can make more money. You can't make more time. So when you're thinking about what you're doing with your time, where you're investing your time, where you're living, who you're spending time with, and even now in 2018, over the last week and a half, I've been thinking more and more about where I'm spending my time, who I'm speaking to, what stories am I watching on Instagram? What am I watching on YouTube? Because your time is your most valuable asset. It's the one thing that we cannot make more of, and when you invest your time smartly, when you invest your time in, big ideas and reading books and learning. I mean, I was watching you a couple of weeks ago with Chelsea Pites and reading books like this, talking in pictures with Chelsea, you can learn so much just from taking action on what some of these influencers are recommending. It's not rocket science to get a Gary Vaynerchuk book, sit down, and then act upon it, no matter what your education level may be.
I agree. And here's the thing. And of course, you mentioned Bearcats. I graduated from San Diego State University, and then our mascot is the Bearcats as well. So anyway.
Nice. And I didn't know you were a Cubs fan too. I'm a Chicago Cubs fan. So
yeah, been a Cubs fan all my life. But but it's really interesting you said that because, like, for many, you mentioned Chelsea Pite's book. She basically mentioned on, beforehand and before, actually, I really like the way how she wrote the book because she basically used her Snapchat to write the book, and it's really smart though because it kind of brought in the process. It took her audience along the journey of writing a book, and it's the same way with live stream as well because I think what many are missing out is like, for example, Facebook Live they're trying to become the television in some sense because I think like last year, Maurice Smith mentioned that they were planning to like put like put emphasis on live video as in the newsfeed, basically paraphrasing. So basically, like if it's like shows, like shows, that's the most important thing. And I think really that many entrepreneurs are missing out on this opportunity to build an audience through live streaming, and I think podcasters too are missing out on the opportunity too.
I think everyone watching this needs to decide what their goals are. The more you define your goals, the more you understand what success looks like for you, the better you can understand the importance of taking these steps along your journey. So for me, I think I've been a victim almost of my own not setting goals high enough, right? In 2015, my goal was to visit 50 states in 100 days. That was it. Boom. That's the end. Visit 50 states in 100 days. And you know what happened? I visited 50 states in 100 days. And then I looked around and said, what? Like, now what happens, right? You almost expect the universe to deliver you something. If you achieve your goal, you're not promised the next step up. You have to know in your mind what's to come, right? So if you're podcasting, if you're writing a book, if you're going out and live streaming at different events, or you're going to social media conferences, like, what do you want to get out of it? Again, that's why I was a minute late here getting on the phone, right? I was on this live stream. I was on the phone with the folks from MDMC 18 in St. Louis, which is coming up at the end of March. And I'm really excited to be there. We were talking symbiotically about, okay, Chris, how can we help you? What can we do to support you for you coming to the conference, and vice versa? And we've got some really exciting things planned, coming up at that conference. I'll be speaking 3 different times there, which is awesome. And, the idea of going to these conferences as an entrepreneur, think about what you can get out of it. Think of what that conference can do for you, whether it's something tangible or, for me, the big thing that I've really come to terms with, Cheval, with all these conferences that I attended last year, is trying to take at least one person from every conference that I go to and turn them into like a best friend. Chris Gillibo puts it really, really well in his book, talking about understanding and identifying where people fit within your tribe. And every conference that I go to, I want to find that one person who really, really fits in my tribe. Now in Houston, and I'm sure a lot of your friends from Houston are going to be watching as well. I'm blessed to have a lot of people, from Houston deep in my tribe, like Cheval, like Rebecca Council, like Christy Gillentine, like Elizabeth Hamilton, like all of these folks, like they're all such incredible, special people. And when I was in Houston, I went out of my way. I'm like, this girl, Christina Torres, like, I need to go talk to Christina. Like, I want to get to know this girl better. She is fantastic. And now here she is, a new mom, by the way. So Christina, if you're watching, congratulations. The baby looks fantastic. So glad and so happy for you and your family. That is awesome. So Houston's got one newest resident there. So we're all excited about that. But every conference that I go to, that is my strategy now, is I want to leave that conference with at least one person who is like in my circle. Like, I'm going to text you every day. Like, we'll talk on the phone, like, and your tribe grows and grows and grows. And it's amazing how well that works out when you put your mind to it.
And that's really interesting because, of course, I think too, you mentioned about social media, especially being important. And, like how you said, building that tribe. So why do you think many businesses, especially, most large businesses are missing the boat on social media, especially now that, like, this year, I think it's a year where, like, Samantha Kelly, who's known as the tweeting goddess, she mentioned this that many CEOs will have to be on social now in order to, to engage, to market themselves and their business to their people. So why do you think most businesses are missing out on social? Because all they're doing is, because it seems that most are only broadcasting, basically.
Yeah, yeah. No, we could do a whole 2-hour show on this question alone, Cheval. Because I think that's a pretty broad brush statement to say that most businesses are missing out on social. I don't know that I fully agree with that. I would sort of channel my friend Dan Gingiss, who, if you haven't met Dan, I'd love to introduce you. Maybe he could be a future guest here on What's the Word as well, because he's absolutely in my tribe. He helped me get my job at Humana, which was incredible, and he's also a Cubs fan. He lives in Chicago. So there you go. You can talk about Cubs all day long. I would say that I think the biggest change that we're seeing now is that good customer service is the new marketing, right? That we as customers come to expect maybe not necessarily this great institutional social media strategy, from a given brand, right? Like, that's great. Like, McDonald's wants to work with Rick and Morty and make the Szechuan sauce. That's fine. Great. But what is my personal experience with McDonald's? What is my personal experience with any of these brands? If I send them a tweet, if I send them a Facebook message, if I create a Snapchat story about them and tag them, all those sort of things, am I going to get a response? And then and that's the most important thing. Am I going to get a response at all? And I think that's what you're saying. Most businesses won't respond, right? But then what is the value of that response? We look at Wendy's and Nugs for Carter last year, right? Like, what was a better marketing campaign last year than Wendy's replying to this one guy, some guy, right, named Carter, right, said, at Wendy's, how many chicken nuggets, how many retweets for free chicken nuggets for a year? And what did they say? What was it, 5 million or whatever? And the dude went out and got 5 million retweets on, and this was not a planned campaign. There were no big meetings about this. This was a social media, what's the word I'm looking for now? A helper, a customer service representative at Wendy's, intelligently replying on the fly, and that turned into one of the most brilliant social media marketing campaigns of all of 2017. And what did it cost them? A couple $100 worth of free chicken nuggets? I mean, that's unbelievable. And so I think that's the way that I would answer your question, Cheval, is I think that businesses need to be able to listen better. They need to be able to understand the conversation that's taking place around their brand. And then if you want to try and channel that, you want to try and come together and create content that is in response to that listens really well to the audience that's out there already, and speaks to the impression that they already have about your brand, that's great. But I would start with focusing on the micro level, the interactions and the engagements, and making sure that if someone is looking for a response from your brand, that you're answering it. I think you're going to get a lot more ROI from starting there than you might get from trying to envision this enormous, awesome social media strategy that is all push, push, push.